Hello there, you're following World News Live from Algiers. To the headlines. Iran says it has agreed with Oman on a new maritime route through the Strait of Hormuz amid US pressure to reopen this strategic waterway, and says reopening the strait depends on a change in Washington's conduct. In Gaza, Israel occupation forces continue artillery shelling across several areas of the Strip. The health ministry says more than 9,000 people remain missing under the rubble, while the UN warns that Gaza remains unsafe for civilians amid ongoing operations. A ministerial meeting on Al-Quds and its holy sites condemned Israel occupation measures and affirmed the city's Palestinian identity. Algeria warned against attempts to undermine the Palestinian national project, calling for stronger action to address challenges facing the Palestinian cause. Details shortly. Welcome to the details of our program. First, in our news, Iran and Oman have reached an understanding on new navigation arrangements for shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, with officials saying the coordinates of a proposed maritime route have been agreed and a joint traffic management agreement is in its final stages. Tehran says the deal does not amount to reopening the waterway, which would require further procedures and conditions. Nabil Khazini has the details.
The world's most critical energy checkpoint may be edging towards a breakthrough, but even tonight, uncertainty still hangs over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran says it has agreed with Oman on the geographic coordinates of a new shipping route through the Strait of Hormuz. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai described the talks as positive and said the joint statement is being finalized, while cautioning that the agreement alone would not guarantee security in the strategic waterway.
The talks have so far been assessed as positive at both the technical and political levels. Iran, in cooperation with Oman, is working to formulate the necessary mechanisms for future arrangements to make maritime navigation through this strategic waterway. These talks are being pursued as a dialogue between the two coastal states of the Strait of Hormuz, with a focus on ensuring safe inbound and outbound shipping routes. These routes take into account the national security considerations of Iran and Oman, while also guaranteeing sovereign rights.
That diplomatic momentum comes as Washington is projecting confidence.
If they back out again, they're going to get hit really hard.
Donald Trump says the Strait of Hormuz will reopen soon, while warning that Iran would face severe military consequences if it does not. His comments reflect growing expectations of progress, even as officials familiar with the negotiations say important details are still being worked through.
Well, the only thing I get a little solace from is they say only consequential presidents. And I am definitely consequential. I mean, if you look at the economy, if you look at what's happening, Iran, as an example, will never have a nuclear weapon. They already can't, but it's going to be formal. The strait's going to be open very soon, or they're going to get hit very hard, and then the strait's going to be open. And we will go into a tremendous attack, the biggest since World War II.
The significance of these talks extends far beyond the Gulf. The Strait of Hormuz carries a substantial share of the world's oil and gas exports, making its security vital to global energy markets. That is why Oman has played a key mediating role. After agreeing in June to continue negotiations on navigation through the strait, Iran and Oman have now taken what Tehran describes as the next step, an agreement on the geographic coordinates of a new shipping route, with a joint announcement being finalized if the remaining conditions are met. It is the clearest indication yet that negotiations are moving forward, although, for now, the final agreement has yet to be formally announced.
Trump also reiterated that Iran would never be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon, saying any potential agreement would include formal guarantees to that effect. He warned that if Tehran were to withdraw from the negotiations, it would face a strong military response from the United States.
And they called me and said, very politely, please, can we talk? Can we talk? They didn't want. And I said, yes, we can talk. Let's get it done. Finally, let's get it done. This should have been done by other presidents for 50 years. You know, you keep hearing 47, but that's been for 3 years now. It's been over 50 years. other presidents or other countries should have been able to do this. And I did something that I had to do, because if they had a nuclear weapon, this whole world would be a different place.
If they back out again, are they done?
Well, if they back out again, they're going to get hit really hard. You know, they know that. They understand that.
In the same context, Trump also warned that Iran would face what he described as a severe military strike if no arrangement is reached with the United States over its nuclear program. He added that the two sides are engaged in what he described as very good discussions.
I hope we won't have to. We're having very good discussions. They don't like to admit that, but it's a little bit disconcerting. You tell people like you, we're having wonderful discussions, and then some guy will come out of Iran and say, we have not met, we have not. It's just such a lie all day long. You understand. It's just incredible.
Axios reported Wednesday, citing regional sources and a U.S. official, that the United States, Iran and Oman are close to a temporary agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, with Washington expected to announce the deal. The proposed 60-day arrangement would route inbound vessels to a northern lane in Iranian waters and outbound vessels through a southern lane in Omani waters, coordinated with Iran. It would not impose transit fees and includes clearing naval mines from the Central Channel as a step toward making it the permanent route. The sources said Qatar, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have helped mediate, while the White House has held talks with Iranian and Omani officials. Iran's leadership reportedly approved the agreement internally on Tuesday. Iranian state television reported Wednesday, citing an informed source, that the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz depends on a change in U.S. conduct and an end to what Iran calls American violations. The source said any potential agreement with Oman would not mean an immediate reopening, adding that the strait would remain closed as long as those violations continue. Iran SIPA news agency quoted an informed Iranian source on Wednesday as saying that the main reason for delays in reaching an agreement with Oman over the Strait of Hormuz was what he described as U.S. interference and threats by President Donald Trump. The source added that continued U.S. interference and threats of military action against Iran were hindering progress toward a deal, stressing that Iran would not sign an agreement or any agreement while such threats remain in place. Pakistan's ambassador to Russia, Faisal Niaz Tirmizi, said Islamabad is carrying out confidential diplomatic efforts to ease U.S.-Iran tensions and serving as a communication channel between the two sides. Speaking to TASS, he said Pakistan is working with regional partners to support diplomacy and that broader involvement could help resolve the dispute. Israel occupation forces continued artillery shelling and gunfire on Wednesday across several areas of Gaza, including central Gaza and Khan Yunis. Local media reported strikes near Al-Dawa Street, northeast of Nusayrat Camp, northern Barrage Camp, and southwest Khan Yunis, alongside heavy gunfire from military vehicles in Gaza City. Israel occupation forces also fired toward eastern areas of Al-Tufah neighborhood amid ongoing operations. Gaza's Ministry of Health Director General Dr. Munir al-Barsh said more than 9,000 people remain missing under the rubble and have not received a proper burial. He said the scale of the tragedy is reflected not only in casualties, but in families erased from records and homes turned into mass graves. Al-Barsh added that rescuers heard trapped survivors but could not reach them, accusing the Israel occupation of implementing the ceasefire only on paper. The United Nations Deputy Spokesperson for the Secretary-General Farhan Haq said Gaza remains unsafe for civilians due to continued military attacks and the demolition of homes by Israel occupation forces. Speaking during a press briefing on Tuesday, Haq stressed the need to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure in Gaza, emphasizing that they must not be targeted under international law.
Turning to the occupied Palestinian territory, our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warned that Gaza remains unsafe for civilians as shootings and other military attacks continue, including in places where children are trying to learn. Today in Gaza City, our partners reported that a 6th grade student was taken to the hospital after being hit by a bullet and injured in a tented classroom. And yesterday, farther north in Algerian, Israeli forces reportedly demolished homes as well as the last remaining school in what was previously a 4-school compound.
In the same context, the United Nations deputy spokesperson for the Secretary General said occupation authorities had demolished a school in the occupied West Bank, warning that more than 1,000 Palestinians are facing pressure to leave the area. He highlighted the ongoing humanitarian concerns in the territory amid reports of displacement and restrictions affecting Palestinian communities. Let's take a listen.
Across the West Bank, more than 80 Palestinian schools are currently subject to demolition or related orders. So far this year, our education partners have reached more than 60,000 students in the West Bank through remedial and catch-up learning programs. They rehabilitated 30 schools, provided transportation assistance and other protective measures to more than 2,600 students and education personnel in high-risk areas, and they delivered education-specific cash assistance, psychosocial support, and legal aid. Still, funding remains critically low, with just over 10% of the funding required for education support secured this year.
Israel occupation forces launched a wide-scale raid and arrest campaign Wednesday across several areas in the occupied West Bank. Local reports said Palestinians were detained in Tubas, Bethlehem, Ramallah, Tulkarem, Kalkalie, and East Al-Quds. Forces also raided towns and refugee camps, conducting searches and detentions, while a journalist was briefly held and later released. In Luban al-Sharqiyya, south of Nablus, occupation forces used stun grenades and tear gas during a raid, according to local reports. A ministerial meeting in support of Al-Quds and its holy sites held in Jordan's capital Amman on Wednesday condemned Israel occupation policies and measures aimed at altering the Arab, Islamic and Christian identity of occupied Al-Quds, as well as changing its legal and demographic status. The meeting rejected these actions as null and void, saying they have no legal effect. In its final statement, the meeting reaffirmed that East Al-Quds is part of the occupied Palestinian territories and that the Israel occupation has no sovereignty over it. It described the city as the capital of a future Palestinian state, which it said should be established as a free, independent and sovereign state along the 1967 borders, living in security and peace alongside the Israel occupation under a two-state solution. The ministers also warned that the occupation actions targeting Islamic holy sites in occupied Al-Quds constitute a serious provocation to the feelings of nearly 2 billion Muslims worldwide and could fuel a religious conflict whose consequences would extend beyond the region. Algeria has warned against attempts to undermine the Palestinian national project. Speaking during the opening session of the ministerial meeting in support of Al-Quds and its holy sites in Jordan's capital, Amman, Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf highlighted what he described as the Israel occupation efforts to eliminate any hope of establishing an independent and sovereign Palestinian state. Attaf also pointed to the situation in the city of Al-Quds, saying it is facing actions by occupation authorities that constitute a blatant violation of relevant international legitimacy resolutions.
We are meeting today at an extremely sensitive time, as attempts to thwart the Palestinian national project continue, while the Israeli settlement expansion project grows stronger. It is a difficult period in which the Israeli occupation seeks to eliminate any hope for establishing an independent and sovereign Palestinian state, and to realize its long-cherished project of establishing what is falsely and illegitimately called the Greater Israel. As part of the settlement project, whose objectives, foundations and intentions are clear, the holy city of Al-Quds, with its unique symbolism and special status, is being subjected to a systematic campaign aimed at undermining its legal status, obliterating its distinct religious character, and altering its demographic composition by imposing new realities on the ground in flagrant violation of the relevant international legitimacy resolutions.
Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf called for collective efforts to focus on three interconnected and complementary priorities aimed at protecting the city of Al-Quds. He stressed the need to safeguard the city's religious and historical status while addressing the challenges facing the holy sites. Let's take a listen.
On that basis, Algeria believes that protecting the holy city of Al-Quds requires focusing our collective efforts on three interrelated and complementary priorities. First, intensifying political and diplomatic action to confront all unilateral measures aimed at changing the city's historic character, legal status, and demographic composition, while continuing efforts to prevent the relocation of diplomatic missions to the holy city and reaffirming that the city is the capital of the State of Palestine. Second, safeguarding the existing historical and legal status quo of the Islamic and Christian holy sites, particularly through support for the Hashemite custodianship over these holy places, as it constitutes a fundamental element in their protection, the preservation of their identity, and the guarantee of freedom of worship. Third, strengthening the steadfastness of the residents of Al-Quds by supporting Palestinian institutions in Al-Quds and enabling them to continue fulfilling their national mission, thereby contributing to preserving the Palestinian presence in the city and safeguarding its cultural and religious identity.
At the conclusion of his remarks, Algeria's foreign minister said the Palestinian issue is going through a critical and decisive phase. He called on participants to rise to the demands of the current moment and meet the aspirations of the Palestinian people.
The stage the Palestinian cause is going through in general, and the holy city of Al-Quds in particular, is a critical and pivotal one. Above all, it is a real test of our ability to elevate joint Arab and Islamic action to the level of the magnitude of the challenges and the gravity of the attacks targeting the holy city of Al-Quds. And behind it, the Palestinian national project. We must rise to the demands of this pivotal moment and to the aspirations of the Palestinian people, the rightful owners of the cause and the authentic national project.
Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf and Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati praised the strong momentum in bilateral relations, citing the commitment of both countries' leaders to expand cooperation. During talks in Amman on the sidelines of an Arab ministerial meeting on Al-Quds, the two ministers agreed to convene a joint committee to follow up on previous agreements and prepare for the next session with a focus on industry, agriculture and energy. They also discussed regional and international developments, including the latest situation in the Middle East. Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf held talks Wednesday with his Turkish counterpart Hakan Fidan in Amman, Jordan, to discuss bilateral relations. The two sides agreed to convene joint cooperation mechanisms, including the Joint Planning Committee and the High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council. They also exchanged views on regional and international issues, including developments in the Sahel region and the Middle East. Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf and Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammad Ishaq Dar reviewed bilateral relations and agreed to boost cooperation by activating joint mechanisms during talks in Amman on the sidelines of an Arab ministerial meeting on Al-Quds. The two ministers discussed regional issues, including the Palestinian cause, Gaza, and Pakistan's mediation efforts to ease Middle East tensions. Entrusted by the Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, arrived earlier today in Minsk, the capital of the Friendly Republic of Belarus, for an official visit. The visit aims to support the positive momentum characterizing relations between Algeria and Belarus. The Minister of State is scheduled to be received by the President of the Republic of Belarus and will also meet with the Speaker of the Belarusian National Assembly. Mr. Ahmed Attaf will also meet with his Belarusian counterpart to assess the current state of bilateral relations and explore ways to strengthen them. in addition to exchanging views on international and regional issues of mutual interest. Bloomberg has identified Algeria as a key pillar of Europe's future energy security, describing the country as a strategic partner capable of strengthening gas supplies over the medium and long term. The US-based financial news agency highlighted the strategic importance of the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline linking Nigeria, Niger, and Algeria as a major component of Europe's future energy landscape. Details with Marwa Bleiwer.
Algeria has emerged as one of the central players in the geopolitical race to secure Europe's future gas supplies. The assessment was carried by the US-based financial news agency Bloomberg, which describes Algeria as a strategic energy hub whose role is becoming increasingly critical as Europe looks to diversify its sources of natural gas. In a report depicting Algeria's leading role in Africa's energy supply to Europe, Bloomberg argues that Algeria enjoys a strategic advantage over competing projects thanks to its existing export infrastructure, which already connects directly to European markets. Its network will allow Nigerian gas to reach Europe immediately once the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline is completed. The pipeline, led by Algeria in partnership with Nigeria and Niger, is one of Africa's largest energy projects. Launched by the energy ministers of the three countries from Algeria's southern province of Adrar, the project will funnel natural gas from Nigeria's gas fields through Niger to Algeria with an estimated annual capacity of around 30 billion cubic meters. Bloomberg also highlighted Algeria's existing export infrastructure as one of the project's greatest strengths. With the Transmed pipeline supplying Italy in the Med gas pipeline linking Algeria directly to Spain, Nigerian gas would not require new offshore export corridors. Instead, it would be integrated directly into Algeria's existing export network, reducing the costs and significantly shortening delivery times to European markets. The U.S. financial news agency also emphasized Algeria's strategic geographic position, its reliability as an energy supplier, and its long-standing record of honoring its commitments to international partners. According to Bloomberg, those advantages place Algeria among the leading candidates to preserve a central role in Europe's future energy architecture, while the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline further reinforces the country's position as a regional hub for natural gas exports to Europe.
Algerian Prime Minister Sifir Rieb inaugurated on Wednesday in Algiers a factory dedicated to the production of brake pads and related components. According to a statement from the Algerian Prime Minister's office, the industrial project located in east of Algiers was carried out in line with Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboun's directives to enhance the value of recovered assets linked to corruption cases, reintegrating them into the national economy and transforming them into productive projects capable of generating added value, creating jobs, supporting investment, and strengthening domestic production. The facility is expected to help meet part of the national market's needs, reduce the import bill for these components, increase local integration rates, and strengthen the after-sales service sector. It is also expected to open new opportunities for marketing Algerian products in international markets.
حضرنا اليوم سويا من أجل تدشين.
We are gathered here to inaugurate the brake manufacturing unit and its accessories in Ruiba. This unit is of a great importance to the production of spare parts, given the critical nature of brake manufacturing and its direct connection to the safety of all types of vehicles within a period of no more than 2 months. Thanks to the efforts of the men and women of the National Maintenance Company for the East, affiliated with the JICA Group, we have succeeded today in bringing this unit back into operation, and the process is still ongoing. As I mentioned, all these efforts are being carried out in implementation of the commitments made by the President of the Republic to the Algerian people to recover looted assets and revive confiscated industrial units.
That wraps up our latest updates from the newsroom. Thank you for watching. Stay connected with All24 News.